I'm filming today in 4K for a very specific reason. I will explain that here shortly. So what is frame scaling? It's a setting GTA 5 has boasted for quite a while and mimics downsampling or upsampling depending on which way you tune it. These essentially force your GPU to render a resolution higher or lower than that of your monitor. While on paper this may not make much sense since you can't change the number of pixels your screen boasts, up and downsampling have very relevant purposes in today's gaming industry. To touch briefly on downsampling and why you might want to use it, let's say you have a 120Hz monitor and obviously you want the full 120 frames, but you're only getting about 70 to 80 in-game with the current settings that you have. If you have texture set to very high, you have shadow set to very high, and those are things you don't want to compromise on, then you can actually tweak the scaling counter down to, say, 0.5 like you can in GTA, and keep those in-game settings up while increasing your frame rate. Now, I must warn you, downsampling can look especially bad at resolutions approaching 50% scaling like you're seeing here, 100% being native resolution. In some cases, you might actually be better off lowering textural detail, etc., but it's still a nice inclusion, especially for a game as dynamic as GTA 5. You can play around with both settings and see which one you like the best. If you're a baller on a budget, I'd consider it if games offer this feature. You can actually scale up or down within your NVIDIA and AMD control panels as well if you're down for a more universally scaled experience with more or less stability. Now, chances are, if the game offers a downsampling feature, it'll also offer an upsampling one, and this is where things can get dicey, especially for those who have decent hardware, ergo maybe an i5 or i7 with maybe a GTX 1070 or 1080 on AMD's side, a Ryzen 7 chip, and maybe a Fury X. You get the point. You can interchange all of those. But if you spend a lot of money on your hardware, you want your game to look decent, and that's where frame scaling can really throw people off, especially if you're not willing to just sit down and look at things and compare them side by side. So that's what I'm going to do for you in this video. With this kind of horsepower, you can most certainly take advantage of frame scaling, but what exactly does it do to the image on screen? Is it even worth it? Here's where the 4K video makes a bit of sense. You see, YouTube compresses the living hell out of video, especially in 1080p, so in 4K I can preserve a bit more of my, well, bitrate. This means you'll likely see a bigger difference between the two frames I'm about to show you. On the left, native 1440p resolution, or ×1 frame scaling. On the right, the highest frame scaling resolution possible within GTA 5, ×2.5, putting us well beyond the resolution of 4K, or Ultra HD to be more specific. Now, I know what you're thinking. Greg, these look identical, and unfortunately, that's the trend here on my end as well. To be completely honest, if it wasn't for the stark frame rate difference, I'd have gotten them mixed up on screen, and that's the trend throughout these scenes. Even zoomed in, you'll have a very difficult time telling them apart. The native scaling looks a bit more grainy and noisy, as one might expect, but I wouldn't say it's worth the insane frame rate dip. Think of upscaling as sort of like increasing your bitrate. You're not changing your resolution per se, but you are making things look a bit more fluid and sharp, to a degree, and we don't see much of that here. We literally went from 130 to 60 FPS, by the way, and that's on two GTX 1080s at 2 GHz apiece, putting this 165Hz monitor to shame. I've heard quite a lot of hype in regard to frame upscaling over anti-aliasing, but I have to say, at this point, I'm convinced of the opposite. I recently ran a bunch of anti-aliasing tests within GTA 5 for the Minute Science playlist, and I must say, I do prefer anti-aliasing over upscaling, at least with these settings and this game. Another reason why I'd suggest staying away, going back to what we just mentioned, the performance hit. Blue Sky struggled big time with the 250% scaling, and for that small of a clarity bump, you can imagine how indistinguishable these smaller jumps are. The frame rate dip wasn't as bad, and neither were the frame rates here, but I'd still recommend pushing AA settings before tweaking with upscaling in any way. Again, take what I've said in this video with a grain of salt. I'm speaking from my own experience and with my own gear. But with that said, if you've got solid hardware and a monitor with a crazy high refresh rate, I strongly recommend sticking with the FPS over marginal jumps in graphical clarity. And if that doesn't suit your fancy, play around with anti-aliasing first. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, thumbs down for the opposite. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already. I will catch you in the next video where I review the Gigabyte AX370 Gaming K7 Ryzen motherboard. We're going to use that in our custom loop build anyway. This is Salazar Studio. Thanks for learning with us.